Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom. How's it going?
I'm good, Tony. Thanks for
No,
asking.
no. How's it going?
I think I already answered that. So, Tony, why don't you tell me how you're doing?
No, and I apologize for the long pause because it annoys me when people just jerk around the listeners like that. I used to listen to a band and they had one song that was just 10 minutes of fuzz, and I quit the band. I stopped listening to the band after that because just give us the show, give us whatever. And so I apologize for that long pause. Honestly, Tom, I forgot what I was supposed to say.
I completely believe that. So,
so yes, I am doing wonderful. Thank you for asking. Tom, it's in the 50s right now, which is pretty cool. Spring officially here, winter officially gone.
mm-hmm.
And nothing that I can say can possibly jinx any of that.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the graphic of the seasons in Ohio, and it's winter, and then it's full spring, and then it's second winter, and then it's the false spring, and then it's the third winter. I feel like we're in full spring right now. For the first time in like a month, there might not be snow on the ground shortly, so that's something. So, but yeah, I think we're probably not. I'm going to guess that we're probably not right exactly on the cusp of sunscreen weather just yet.
Be careful with your words there, Tom. I think we might be. As I told you many weeks ago, I seen some robins, so the spring is sprung. So congratulations to all of us for that. We made it, and certainly the snow is now gone.
Good, and gone for good. So. We have that going for us, which is nice.
No late February snows, no early March, no early Mays, early Aprils. I remember a few years back, Tom. It was the year it snowed for, I think, the October Indiana game. We also, that following year, had snow like every month, even up until May. Just random here, a little bit of snow. So that's a lot of snow. So I figure like we've got to keep, like we did our time. Now give us this snow release, this work release where we don't have to deal with it as much. And I feel like, it's good that it's finally gone. And now we can get back to just being outside with the mowing and the leaves and just nature. No longer having our eyes sunburned because of the snow.
All of the sounds that you're used to, you know and love, interrupting this podcast. Lawnmowers, leaf blowers, they're all coming back soon. No more icicles crashing down off of gutters and that kind of stuff. So entirely new noises to interrupt the podcast coming very soon. So you have that to look forward to.
Speaking of interrupting the podcast, Tom, let's get started.
All right, let's do that with at VWChadW, and we got two kind of related questions here. How many catches/yards and carries/yards do you project in the wide receiver/running back positions? Long pause. And he literally has written long pause. There is someone who knows his brand and knows our brand, I would say. Follow up, do you think Marvin Harrison or Miyan Williams could break out and come into the national eye? And I guess my question for Marvin Harrison is, what does he have to do if 3 touchdowns in the Rose Bowl didn't count as breaking out and coming into the national eye?
Yeah, as I said on the last show, I just expect that to continue. I'm expecting 1,000 yards, and I don't know what is that, 70 catches. How many catches is that for Marvin Harrison? I expect him to be 1,000-yard receiver. I just wonder if Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming will steal catches from each other, and do they both top out? Does anybody top out over 45, 50? Because I remember last year, Tom, saying, well, how could Jaxon Smith-Njigba possibly get more than like 45 or 50 catches because he's got Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, and yet they found a way because being in the slot, that's just what they do. But I think they find Marvin Harrison quite a bit. Like I said, 60, 70 catches, really over 15 games, Tom. I know you're going to go over 12 games, but I think 15 games, certainly 1,000 yards for Marvin Harrison. And I'm just not sure whether one of Emeka Egbuka or Julian Fleming will overtake the other. and become the third 1,000-yard receiver, or if they're just going to have 2,000-yard guys, 600-yard guys. Don't forget about Travion Henderson with 35 catches in there as well, because I think he had, 24, 27 last year as a true freshman. So that's going to be, and I still think it's just going to be those four guys in terms of the catches, the receivers. I don't know that Jaden Ballard, what does he top out at next year? Like 8, 10 catches, something like that. I'm not really expecting much from him because there's not a lot of room for him just yet.
Yeah, for someone like Jaden Ballard, I think you might be looking at like the Julian Fleming line from this year. 12 catches, 86 yards, a touchdown. Maybe he works his way into that rotation, but the top of that rotation is so good right now that I don't know that you're necessarily going to do that. And they have not been running that six. We kind of got used to the 6 receiver rotation for a while, and then they've kind of gotten away from that the last couple of years. So I don't think you're going to see a ton for someone like Jaden Ballard. The person who's fascinating to me is Jaxon Smith-Njigba, because you look at his numbers from last year, 95 catches, 1,606 yards, 9 touchdowns, and it's like, okay, he should beat the touchdown number. How is he going to beat 95 receptions? Like, how is that possible? And then you look and it's like, well, he could play 2 extra games. And also Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson aren't there, so he's not going to see, he's not going down in the pecking order of reads for CJ Stroud on any given play. So, it feels like you might see the first 100 reception in a season out of Jaxon Smith-Njigba in school history. You might see. Did he set the single season school receiving yardage record, right? No one had better than 1,600, right? Yeah, you probably see another record there. As far as the other guys, let's say Marvin Harrison. I think Marvin Harrison is probably going to be my pick for the guy who has the second most receptions and second most yardage on the team. And I think 70 and 1,000. Give him the Garrett Wilson numbers from last year, because Garrett Wilson only played 11 games. So you give Marvin Harrison Jr. those numbers over 15 games. You're not putting Garrett Wilson level expectations on him because you got 4 extra games to do it. But 70 catches, 1,058 yards, 12 touchdowns. That's probably in the ballpark for him. And then Julian Fleming / Emeka Egbuka. I do wonder if you're going to see some of those receptions split between those guys, which you said 2,000-yard guys and a couple 600-yard guys, something like that. I think that's real possible. Travion Henderson then last year, 27 catches, 312 yards, 4 touchdowns. Put him in that kind of general range. The question to me is tight end. Jeremy Ruckert, 26, 309, 3 touchdowns. I don't think you're necessarily getting that level of production out of wide receivers or out of tight ends next year, so you're probably seeing a little bit more for the wide receivers. So, yeah, I think you might see, they had 4,952 yards passing this year. I would certainly think they get to over 5,000 next year with a potential extra game or two, even if they can run the ball better next year. So it's really unrealistic to say this guy's going to break all the school records this year, but he just set them last year, and now he's probably moving up the pecking order. So, yeah, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, if I tell you he has 110 catches for 1,800 yards and 13 touchdowns, is that, are you betting the over or the under on those? If I'm giving you a little bit of a one of them's going to be minus 150 and one of them's going to be like plus 130. You get a little bonus for betting the over here.
Over of 110, I'm probably going to go under, because that's just totally doable.
It's stupid.
Right.
Yeah, it's stupid, but it's also kind of doable.
But what was the yardage?
1,800, I think.
I'm going to go under that as well. And what was the touchdowns?
13, 14, something in that range.
We'll
say 13 and a half.
I may go over that just because if I do expect him to approach 100 catches, but we know he's not necessarily the red zone guy, because again, he fumbles the ball into the end zone way too often. But I also think that's maybe the Marvin Harrison position. But 110 is just would not shock me at all. 1,800 probably would surprise me, even though it shouldn't based on what we saw last year. But this past year was just such a the way he exploded in those 2 games. I saw somebody on Twitter saying, well, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, he's good, but remember, like, he was protected by his 2 outside receivers. And I'm thinking, well, the 2 games he went off, one was he was missing Garrett Wilson. The other, he was missing both Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. So I'm not sure if that follows. But I do think he's going to hit 100. Unless, Tom, they run the ball much better, which they should. But if they're getting the ball back quicker, aren't they going to have more possessions and more plays as well?
Well, and then the question is, are they getting the ball back quicker? And if the defense is giving up 13 points a game and the offense is up, if you're up 42-13 in the third quarter of all these games, how many fourth quarter plays is Jaxon Smith-Njigba going to be in on? That's kind of another question. Looking at the single season yardage record holders for the NCAA, and this is on Wikipedia, so this is very official. 10 players have had 1,800 yards or more in a season receiving. There's a lot of Nevada and Louisiana Tech and Western Michigan and Western Kentucky and Hawaii and Nevada again and Louisiana Tech again. But you do have Devontae Smith, 1,856 yards, just a couple of years ago for Alabama, which is rather famously a power school. Michael Crabtree, 1,962 yards for Texas Tech in 2007. So this is not like completely unprecedented to hit those numbers, but you've got to be pretty darn good. But counterpoint, I have a feeling Jaxon Smith-Njigba is pretty darn good. So, and if you have 15 games to do it, that you're not asking him to average 180 yards a game. You can, if you've got 15 games on your schedule and you average 100 yards a game, you're at 1,500, and so then you only have 300 left. So yeah, you're averaging 120 yards a game. Yeah, 120 yards a game gets you to 1,800 over a 15 game season. So that's, it's within the realm of possibility, especially if you have a 280-yard game at some point.
Do you think he is capable of averaging 10 more yards per game than he did last season?
I would say yes, and he averaged 123.5.
So if he averages 10 more yards over 15 games, that's a 2,000-yard season.
Wow. And man, that's like only one player has ever
Trevor Inslee.
Only one player has Trevor Inslee 2,060 for Nevada in 1999.
Had him on my fantasy team, boy.
Yeah, Troy Edwards in 1998 had 1,996 yards for Louisiana Tech. I remember those Troy Edwards teams. He had a 404-yard game
Nebraska?
Or something like that, right? Yeah, didn't he have? Yeah, it was. Oh, there we go. Yeah, 405. I was almost there against Nebraska in 1998. Yes. Yeah. Boy, you could have also given me 100,000 guesses, and I would not have gotten Jeremy Gallon, number 2, single game all-time NCAA record, 369 yards against Michigan against Indiana in 2013.
Yeah,
I would have gone a long time before I figured that out.
I had forgotten about that one for sure. Not much memorable there. Now, Miyan Williams, you made a good point talking about all of these blowouts, and you're getting the ball back, and the defense giving up fewer points. Could we see a situation like Master Teague in, 2019, where he was rushed for 789 yards. He was basically the guy who was one of the top rushers in the nation in the fourth quarter because they just gave the ball to him and he ran out the clock. And I don't know that Miyan Williams would be happy with that, but he could do very well as that guy in the second half who just that's what he does. He salts things away. And if I look here, because the 2019 rushing stats in the Big Ten, because there are numbers where Miyan Williams or Master Teague had some numbers that were better than like Jonathan Taylor's in the fourth quarter. It's real quick here. In the fourth quarter, Master Teague, 50 carries for 359 yards in 2019. Jonathan Taylor, 54 carries for 333 yards in 2019. So he was clearly, he averaged 7.2 yards per carry in the fourth quarter. Master Teague was one of those guys that just, you get J.K. Dobbins off the field, everybody's happy. Can Miyan Williams do that? Yes, he could. Is he willing to? I think he'll get involved more than just the second half, though. Unlike Master Teague, who is pretty much just a second half guy in 2019.
Yeah, well, he was. There was a point during that season, maybe after the Northwestern game, where he was like fourth in the Big Ten in rushing, and it was just all garbage time, which is insane. But yeah, no, he's you would think that Miyan Williams is they're gonna try and get him some first half carries as well. I mean, they try to rotate those guys. Tony Alford tries to rotate those guys in the first half a decent amount, so you'd think he'd get a first half series or two. But then if it's a lot of second half, and how do you keep all those guys busy? Assuming you have a healthy Marcus Crowley this fall and a Miyan Williams this fall, and Dallin Hayden and Evan Pryor, like that's a lot of running backs to get carries for. So, I don't know that Miyan Williams is necessarily getting all of those second half carries either. So he's probably got to do a little more of that work in the first half. But is Miyan Williams going to come into the national eye as a backup running back at Ohio State? Probably not, but you could end up with a 600, 700 yard season. That would not, that doesn't, they're not talking about you on game day if you do that, but that's a pretty solid season.
He rushed for 507 yards last year. Do you think he betters that this year?
I'm going to say yes. I think so. I mean, I think you're going to have, yeah.
I was originally going to put the over-under at 640 or something like that for you.
Yeah,
that sounds that's about right. Where Travion Henderson, we may have had him last year, and I think you clearly went under, and I said over.
I think if you go back, you will find that I was fairly bullish on Travion Henderson last year. Not bullish enough, apparently, but fairly bullish. Small correction here. Wikipedia is apparently not quite up to date because they do not have Jaxon Smith-Njigba's Rose Bowl game on the single game leader. That was the fifth highest receiving single game yardage game in NCAA history. So seems good. Troy Edwards at 405, Jeremy Gallon 369, Randy Gatewood for UNLV in 1994 at 363, and Chuck Hughes for Texas Western, which is now UTEP, in 1965 against North Texas State. That's it. And then after that, it's all guys who had fewer than Jaxon Smith-Njigba. The one that's blowing is, according to this, you have the number 10 greatest single game receiving total happened on October 7th, 1969 for Tulsa against Idaho State when Rick Eber had 322 yards. The number 11 greatest receiving single game total of all time happened for Tulsa on October 7th, 1967 against Iowa State with Harry Wood with 318. So the two of those guys combined had 640 yards receiving in one game. Seems like a lot. I have not heard about this game, but man, I'm interested to look at this game now.
Yeah, anytime you get a chance to look at Harry Wood, doing that.
Wasn't me this time. I'd like the record to show it was not me this time. Anyway, so moving on in a more professional manner to @Michael Sargent, timing on SEC expansion and Big Ten reconfiguration. And the SEC expansion is kind of an interesting question because it's you get these I think Texas and Oklahoma are still supposed to technically be playing 2 more years in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? I think 2 more under their contracts, and they can get bought out early, but it's going to cost them more money. The CBS deal, I get the sense, I think they would like to be done after 2022 because then the CBS deal with the SEC expires, and it becomes an ESPN property. ESPN basically, I think, takes over the SEC after, this CBS 3:30 game on for the SEC, the old Vern Lundquist slot, like that has been the single greatest deal in all of television. They were paying $300 million or something like that for that. And, the new deal is going to be like, it's going to be so much more. I'm not going to remember the numbers, but the new deal is going to be 5 times, 6 times as much as what CBS was paying. So what, I think they're going to want to have Texas and Oklahoma and that rebranded SEC when that contract starts. So my guess would be this would be the last year for Texas and Oklahoma, because they're paying something like an $80 million buyout to get out. But, in the big grand scheme, when you're talking about as much TV money as the SEC is going to be bringing in under this new deal, that may not matter. And they're going to want to roll out the big shiny new SEC under that new ESPN contract. So that would be my guess, is this is the last season. And, for the Big Ten is also looking at a new TV deal. This is the last season under the current TV deal, 2023. It's widely expected that new TV deal for 2023 and beyond will be Fox and CBS splitting the Big Ten. If that happens, it would again be a very logical time for the Big Ten, if they were going to add someone for that 2023 season. So if you don't see movement in the next 6 months, you might just not see movement. They may kind of stand pat for now. I still think they're looking, I think they would like to expand, but the number of schools that would be a good fit, and, does the new ACC, Pac-12, Big Ten Super Friends Alliance keep them from poaching someone from a conference that, if anyone's going to poach from one of those other conferences, the Big Ten is in by far the best position, so the Big Ten can take what they want, who they want from anyone else. So if that's going to happen, I think that's going to happen in the next 12 months. Because, again, a lot of this stuff is going to center around those TV deals, and I think both of those TV deals go into effect in 2023.
Yeah, quick correction. Texas, Oklahoma they've got 3 more years in the Big 12. So their first year in the ACC would be 2025. Well, under the contract they do. No, they don't. Yeah. The SEC was talking back in the summer about how they expected Texas and Oklahoma in SEC this year. Mm-hmm. Now that got slowed down, and there has been talk that they may end up having to wait. I don't see them waiting all the way to 2025, but that grant of rights with the media stuff is the issue, and really that's part of the problem with the Big Ten adding anybody, because the ACC grant of rights goes to 2035, and no school is going to do that. You would need the ACC to basically collapse, which would require more than just the Big Ten getting involved. It may require the SEC getting involved, but you're not going to probably have schools that would be willing to do that, because South Carolina doesn't want Clemson. Florida doesn't want Florida State in the SEC. These kinds of things. They don't want in-state battles and in-conference battles.
Texas A&M didn't want Texas, and here we are. So I don't know that necessarily, because when this initially happened, I was in that same mindset, which is like, well, they're not going to let that happen. It's like, well, sometimes you get to just kind of eat the crap and just take the big check. And in the end, Texas A&M voted for it because it was unanimous. So yeah, so if I don't know, and maybe this is something that would be a little more Machiavellian. That would be if Jim Delaney was still the president of the commissioner of the Big Ten, I feel like he and Greg Sankey probably get together, because Delaney was a North Carolina guy. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he wanted to get North Carolina in the Big Ten. That was long the rumor. So he and Greg Sankey get together, and okay, you get Clemson and you get
Notre Dame.
SEC member Notre Dame. That will be the day.
I thought we were going back and forth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But you get Clemson and Miami and Florida State, and we'll take Virginia and North Carolina and Notre Dame and Georgia Tech, and you'll take Louisville, and then and then they basically don't have a quorum anymore for the ACC, and then the ACC presumably collapses, and then the Big 12 picks up the remnants. And once the ACC collapses, there's no TV contract, and so so then that negates the grant of rights concern. So and then there's also the possibility of the Big Ten going after Pac-12 teams. That's something that we've talked about in the past as well. The Pac-12 conference TV deal expires soon. I think that might be similar to when the Big Ten does. So, do you go after USC? Do you go after Oregon? Do you go after Colorado? Do you go after Utah? I mean, do you try and create more of a, coast-to-coast national brand? That's something we've talked about before. With the current TV contracts, you don't need the Pac-12 to collapse. You could just go get those teams, and even if there's a 1 year gap, then you just kind of ride that out. But does the Super Friends alliance between the three conferences make that untenable? Maybe. I mean, but if the Big Ten doesn't expand, it's probably the Big Ten's choice not to expand.
Yeah, the Pac-12 goes 2 more years.
Mm-hmm.
It ends in the summer of 2024, which is a year after the Big Ten. I just really don't know what makes sense for the Big Ten right now. I do really like the idea of the Big Ten, Delaney and Sankey just getting together and just having a draft of their own, and just this is how we're going to split up Germany, that sort of thing, and just go from there and ruin the ACC. That not only do you get out of that contract, now there's more money available for the Big Ten and the SEC.
And what does ESPN think about that? Because ESPN has a long-term deal with the ACC for not that much money. So is ESPN going to throw a fit about that, or is ESPN going to go, well, that's fine, we'll still have Clemson, and we just won't have Boston College, and who cares? We should, I got halfway through that theoretical exercise with Jim Delaney and didn't actually mention, well, Jim Delaney retired a couple of years ago, so now it's Kevin Warren, and I don't know if I see Kevin Warren sitting down with Greg Sankey and being all Machiavellian like that. So
no, that's why I agree. It would have to be Delaney in this. I do think ESPN still very much wants to have Big Ten games, and I do think it would be a bad idea not to have ESPN as a business partner for the Big Ten in some way, because if you're not on ESPN's any of their airwaves or tube waves, they don't really have much incentive to talk about you, and they have basically just disregarded other sports that they have not had under their umbrella, and I could see the same thing happening for the Big Ten. Now, will they still talk about it on game day? Of course, but are they going to spend as much time? There's no incentive to. Other than, journalistic integrity, which, I mean...
Oh, Tony, you old such and such. Yeah, I mean, look at how the incredible magic trick that ESPN pulled with NHL coverage after the NHL left ESPN. It was like, we talk about all 4 of America's 4 major sports: football, baseball, basketball, and soccer. What do you mean we don't talk about the 4 major sports? We do all the time. We do. Which TV leagues do we have contracts with? Well, we're out of time. All right, so long. Thank you guys all for joining us. I understand the thought on that, and I think there is something to that. But as Fox continues to build its brand, and Fox is not ESPN, and Fox, Big Noon Kickoff is not Game Day, but as they continue to build their brand, I mean, it's just this is the sport is going to continue to become more regionalized and balkanized, I think, between those two, where you're going to have your Peter Burnses down at ESPN, or your Paul Feinbaums down at ESPN, who can't wait to tell you why the SEC is 100,000 times better than anyone else, and if you don't think so, you're an idiot. And Vanderbilt would beat Ohio State by 40, and all the stuff you always hear. And then, you have Joel Klatt, who's telling you that, that no, the SEC is terrible at everything. And, you get kind of, well, let's see, it's almost like it's a microcosm of some other cable network battles that you have probably seen over the years. Oh, hey, look, we're out of time yet again. How about that? But no, I think there's an argument made for sure that ESPN is going to, that's going to hurt Ohio State or the Big Ten in general if ESPN's not talking about them. But with the sport changing as much as it is, and, auto bids the playoffs, is that for sure going to, really cost some bids every year? That I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think the results will be the results. You're not going to go 11-1 or 12-1 and be ignored. Like, where did this Ohio State come from? We haven't seen it. Nobody's talked about them all year. I just there is an ability to steer the narrative that ESPN has. That is it enough? There has to be a real argument between one team and another team. If there's no argument, then there's no argument. But if there is an argument, then there could be some manufacturing of opinions that ESPN can do, and other networks can as well. I mean, we've seen this in other areas of everything for the last decade or whatever. Like, TV can convince you of a lot of stuff, no matter what kind of titles you have or jobs you have. If you watch enough of it and you watch certain things, like, you will start to spout what you have heard. And I don't think committee members or voters are any different.
And, the other part of this conversation is, so if you're telling me that that's going to make Kirk Herbstreit good up and lobby for Georgia to be ahead of Ohio State, even if Georgia has lost the SEC championship game in, say, I don't know, 2018, something like that, can you imagine how different that would be if the ESPN didn't hold the Big Ten's TV rights? Oh, wait, it already happened. It literally already happened that he was lobbying for, and then lo and behold, Georgia was ahead of Ohio State that year. Like, I mean, it's just, I don't know if this really makes a material difference.
Yeah, it's go ahead.
It just, it feels like that's kind of a little bit baked into the cake. And, you hear the conspiracy theory that it's the fact that Fox owns half of the Big Ten's rights and ESPN owns pretty much all, the vast majority of the SEC's rights. And also that, that they knew the CBS deal was coming to an end and they were going to be able to buy out CBS at the end of the deal. And so, again, like, it's when you have a change in your coverage, like you did with ESPN and the NHL, you kind of lose, which is just, your business is, there is a 1-to-1 correlation of your business and the editorial side, your business side and your editorial side. When you have something like that, you kind of lose the right to get all holier than thou about what we would, sir, how dare you? We would never allow our business relationships to compromise our editorial content selection. Like, how could you possibly think that? Like, okay, like, all right, well, we've all seen it, so I don't know that there's a certain part of this argument that might be the horse is already out of the barn on this one to a certain degree. So if the horse is just more out of the barn, like, how much worse is that going to be for them?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the Andy Staples from SI, The Athletic, his arguments about paying players or having the NIL stuff, because people are like, well, you're going to give Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia and Clemson the advantage here, and they're going to be able to pay, and they're going to be winning. And he's like, which is that's how it is now. So, like, really, how much is this actually changing anything? When what you're telling me is the same people who are already benefiting from spending money and caring are now also going to benefit from this as well, maybe a little bit more. Like, so it doesn't change anything. And why are you against it? And you're absolutely right with the Big Ten, SEC, ESPN connection, because you don't see a lot of people banging their fists on the desks now for the Big Ten, unless it's like Fox, which then it's like the whole corporate sponsored partnerships is just like, it's not great either way. And to see them intertwined, it's like, if you start spouting too much for the Big Ten, you're no different than Gary Danielson at CBS. And I feel terrible for poor Gary Danielson, who, if CBS gets the Big Ten and he has to go back to covering Big Ten games, I don't know how he's going to handle it.
Well, you're going to hear a lot about Ryan and Jim and James and, oh, my buddy, oh, hey.
We've got 4 questions left. We've done our 30 minutes. I feel like we should. Do you want to go another, or do we?
I think we've got another show. There's because I don't want to zip through these and not give people their full answer. So I think we've got another show coming up at some point later this week.
That's perfect. Then we will go ahead and end it here with some projections about the Ohio State offense. Eventually, I do want to do some projections on the Ohio State defense. I'm going to put some over-unders on the Jim Knowles defense together for you, and we're going to discuss that. I may solicit some over-unders from the people on Twitter and on the message board as well, because I don't like thinking of everything, because that's what I do at this show. It's like everything. I got to come up with everything, including these listener questions show where I have to come up sometimes with 1 out of 30 questions. It's excessive. But because I do want to get into the defensive stuff, because I there are going to be some significant stats that come out of Jim Knowles' defense, I believe, in terms of TFLs and sacks that maybe we haven't seen for a while at the linebacker position, which should be fun to talk about. But that will do it for today. Obviously, want to thank you all for tuning in. As always, thanks for spending some time, taking your time to listen to us, to watch us. You really, you don't have to, and you do. And we thank you for that. So that will do it for today, and we will talk to you guys later.